Everybody, my name is Clarissa Burt, and I am so thrilled to be here tonight. The story that we've got for you this evening is something really that it was written in the history books, literally written in the history books, and I cannot wait to tell you more about that. This is the 4th season of the Sons and Daughters of Italy Facebook Lives, and I believe it is the 6th episode. So again, I can't wait to jump into it with my co-host tonight, Dan Onofrio, who is coming in from where tonight, Dan?
Connecticut, Clarissa. Good evening. Thanks for
Coming in
having
from
me.
Connecticut. I hear it's starting to get a little chilly up there. I'm thrilled to be in Phoenix, Arizona tonight. But Dan, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit more about who you are before I introduce our guest.
Thank you very much, Clarissa, and good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm Dan Onofrio. I'm actually the immediate past state president for Connecticut, our 10 lodge network here in Connecticut. I'm currently proudly serving as a national trustee for the Order of Sons and Daughters of Italy in America, and working with Justin and the other folks throughout the national order. So thank you, and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And we're really excited about some of the news that's coming out of OSDIA. I call it OSDIA, the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America. I happen to also be an honorary member, thanks to the chapter that was opened up in Rome. And as Barbara knows, I did live in Italy for approximately 30 years. So whereas I don't have Italian blood, I do speak Italian, and I am an Italian citizen. So there. All right. With all of that being said, Barbara Salani, I mean, we all know and love her. Her music has reached every angle of the world on the largest world stages. We're going to get a little bit more into that. She's going to tell us all about that. But the story that she brings to the table tonight about her father and her uncle that were captured by the Nazis and put into a concentration camp is something that for the last half hour we've all sort of been talking about, and so that I could learn a little bit more about the history. But Barbara, welcome to our show. We are so thrilled to be able to count stories like this, because I do feel it's so important that we keep the Italian history from, especially in this case, World War II, alive. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. You're coming in from where, Barbara?
Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this beautiful interview, and thank you, Clarissa, Dan, and Justin. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about my book. Okay, well, I'm here in Boca Raton, Florida right now, but I lived many years, like you did, in Italy, and in Viareggio, in Tuscany, yes.
Yeah,
and right now I'm here, and I love it. I love to live in Florida.
So I want to go right into the story that, Justin and Dan and myself, please go ahead.
Yes, now, first of all, I would like to thank Order of Sons and Daughters of Italy. And first of all, to thank Edmondo Catania. He was the first one who invited me at the Bonanno Lodge here in Boca Raton. And then also thank Mark Denunzio of the Grand Lodge of Florida, who also invited me for a presentation. And now I'm like speechless of being invited by you guys for the national orders of Sons and Daughters.
Well, we're never speechless around here, Barbara. So you're in good hands with us tonight. Do we know Justin, Mark Denunzio? We love Mark. He certainly is one of the colonne portanti, let's say, of the OSDIA here in the United States.
So I just thank them, because if it was not for them, I wouldn't be here tonight. So thank you so much to all of them, really.
Well, I'd like to get into the part where your book, Music for Life, it recounts the story of your father. Yes. And not only we know that it's in English, it's also translated in Italian. It's also translated into Spanish. Go ahead, show us the other one. And we can find those books on Amazon. But the story Music for Life, give us, please, if you would, the backstory on what happened to your father, Giulio, your uncle Renato, when they were together, bombed one night by the Nazis, sleeping in their beds at 4 o'clock in the morning in Viareggio.
Yes, well, during World War II, there was this alliance between, let's say, Germany, Italy, and also in Japan. That was the Axis alliance. and they were, let's say, doing World War II together until what happened, until the King of Italy, Vittorio Emanuele III, dismissed Mussolini, and he signed a secret contract with the Allies, with the Americans and the British. And so the Germans got so mad at the Italians that they started doing revenge against the population. And that's why, although my family was not Jewish, and although they were teenagers, okay, and they were sleeping in their beds, they didn't do anything wrong. It was
Right.
4 in the morning. But the Germans were so mad at the Italians that they invaded Italy, especially coming from the north.
North, yeah.
They took all the men possible, and they sent those men to concentration camps that they called work camps. Okay, so that was they were taken there, and many before there were also the Jewish, but the Jewish, were not really work camps, were extermination camps.
Right.
So
So your brother and your father and your uncle were then taken to Fossoli, which is a frazione of Carpi, which is Modena for all intents
exactly,
and
province
purposes.
of Modena, exactly.
Okay.
So what happens was that they were sleeping, and all of a sudden the Germans burst into their house, and they ordered them to go in line with all the other men that were in the town, and they had to go walk into Lucca, and from there they took the trucks. And when they were in the trucks, they didn't know where they were going to. Nobody told them that they were going to a concentration camp. So what did they do just to spend the time? They started singing like in two voices, and they sang even songs from Il Carnevale di Viareggio, which is a very popular event. So they were like teenagers, and they were saying, okay, we have to go to work, who knows where. Okay, let's keep up our spirits by, and then.
So at a certain point, they get all the men in a room in the concentration camp or the work camp, as you called it before. They line up all the men and they say, okay, who here knows how to do accounting?
Typewrite. Okay, so they just graduated as junior accountants. So my uncle was the first who said, I can typewrite. So he went there, but he was also a musician, a very good pianist. So he showed his skills, and he was so good that the Germans said, okay, you're hired. So he said, okay, but I have my brother here with me. So if you take and hire my brother, I stay. Otherwise, I'm leaving. I'm going with the other prisoners to Auschwitz. That was the
Wow.
the other concentration camp was waiting for them.
Wow.
Okay, so they were lucky because they said, okay, the Germans accepted also my father, and they started working in the concentration camp into this office. This office, and if you allow me, I would like to show you the office where
Justin, please.
Yes, thank you. Can I go?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. As you can see, this is my father, Giulio, and this is my uncle, Renato. And Giulio is in between two girls, while Renato is next to another girl. Mm-hmm. And here you can see the German officer who is watching that they do what they are asked to. They are teaching these girls how to typewrite the contracts of the prisoners of the concentration camp, so that after the three girls learn how to do that, then they are going to be sent to to Auschwitz, to another concentration camp. That was just let's say in the middle. Okay, so that every prisoner had to get there, get all their papers, and then move on to another concentration camp.
Yeah. Wow.
So the good thing was that they found that job, and although they were prisoners, they had like 1 hour after dinner where they could do music, and that was very helpful. In that office, they found an accordion. So my uncle usually started playing and my father singing, and the couples could dance. Okay, that was the moment where also men and women could reunite after, the long
The day of work.
yeah, of work.
Yeah.
So that was the
And some
only
music, some singing, some dancing. Yeah.
families could reunite and dance and just, forget about what happened during the morning and the day, and that really restored them for the fatigue and for the, it was
Absolutely. Dan,
exactly.
we were talking before we were talking, Dan, we were sort of getting to know one another and learn more about Barbara's story and the history that she's bringing to the table tonight, which we both found, and Justin as well, found so fascinating. I'm sure anybody watching right now finds it to be almost an unbelievable type scenario. There is a happier ending, so hang on, everybody, while we get Dan to ask a question or two that he might have.
Yeah, I just think it's an incredible story. And you look at the photo that you share with us and you see them smiling, and really illustrates how they really probably didn't know that they were going off to a camp somewhere that was this working camp, and they felt like, okay, we're just part of this process, and they have an opportunity to work, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how old were they when they were taken?
Okay, my father was 18 years old and my uncle 21.
Yeah.
21 years old. And I guess, so they went through this experience and not really knowing what was going to happen, I guess, right? And they were very fortunate. So is there anything, as you're doing your research around this, was there anything that you were able to capture as, proof of their experience there and some outcomes? Yes. Yeah, we love to hear some about that. Yeah.
Thank you for asking me this question. Yes. As a matter of fact, as you could see in the office, there was a typing machine and a typewriter. And here is the diary my uncle wrote in the toilet paper of the concentration camp. As you can see, it's not as soft as today's toilet paper. So he could write on it. Of
That's
course,
incredible.
He wrote in Italian, and by the way, he wrote not in prose but in poetry, and endecassyllable verses in
Italian, obviously. Yes.
Quartino. So as you can see, I don't think that there is another book that has toilet paper in the cover.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. And you know what, Dan, I think one of the coolest things about the whole story that Barbara was telling us too, and Justin, was the fact that this was actually written after they were freed, if I didn't get the story wrong. So at a certain point, your father and your uncle were in the concentration camp for almost 4 months.
Yes.
When what happens next?
Well, no, they wrote on the toilet paper. My uncle wrote his diary on the toilet paper while he was at this concentration camp. Then when he moved out of the concentration camp, he kept on writing whole life in poetry, but that's another book.
Okay. So let's come back to this book. How did they get freed?
Okay, all right. So you saw that they were training these two girls, 3 girls, okay? Yeah. Because the Germans had that intention to take them to Auschwitz with the other prisoners. And one night, after all, the British Air Force, the Royal Air Force, bombed the concentration camp, and that was November 29th, 1944. And during that night, the bombs not only killed many Germans, but also they destroyed the fence, the barbed wire fence. So many prisoners could escape. Of course, it was wintertime. It was at the end of November, beginning of December. And every prisoner had to go back home, right? Trying to avoid being caught by the Germans, because if they see you that you are escaping from a concentration camp thing, they kill you, right? So that was another danger that they had to avoid, to be killed.
Yeah.
So my father and my uncle ran as fast as they could. They knew that it was a long journey to go back home, because from Emilia Romagna near Modena, they had to go to Viareggio. So they had to cross the Apennine Mountains, like the Appennini, and with, they were not
What they had on, yeah.
They didn't have enough, the shoes that were helpful for them to cross the mountains. So while they were in one of those mountains, guess what? They found the wedding. So when they found this wedding, first thing they said, okay, let's ask them if they need any music. So they went there, they talked to the groom and the bride, and they asked, can we entertain your party here, your wedding, and you can give us something to eat, please, because we were in a concentration camp. They told us. So these villagers were so good. They danced. They well, of course, they gave them something to eat, and they also gave them jackets and coats, and shoes, so that they could go back home walking. So that was,
Dan and Justin, I think the thing that hits me, right in the feels, is the Italian spirit.
Yes.
And throughout this whole story, we've heard a brother stand up to the Germans and say, I'm going to move on if my brother doesn't come with me. Boom, done. Right. So it was his conditions and not the Germans' conditions. Secondly, I'm going to go with, thank the Lord that they were as young as they were to be able to make the trek that they did. Right. So, that was, I guess, really playing on their side as well. Super spirited there. And then making a fair business deal at a wedding, saying,
exactly,
well, what we need, can you please feed us? And not only, what we forgot to say, Barbara, is that your father and his brother, your uncle, both knew how to play every instrument on the planet thanks to your grandfather.
Yes, my grandfather. But let me tell you that if this book is called Music for Life, has a double meaning. One is that they have been doing music throughout all their lives. And the second one is that in this case in particularly, they had to change music for life to keep on living. Okay, so if that wedding was not there, maybe they would have died, because no food, freezing weather, and they were not, they could not.
It's just as we promised at the top of the show, an amazing story, history that is just full on, really deep and intense.
Let me go back to your question before.
Go right ahead.
Mother, Euclides Salani, he was a great conductor. He was the conductor of Viareggio's band, municipal band. And he had this band, and his children and his students, so he was teaching his children especially all the instruments. Because if one member was missing, these kids had to go and play any instrument that was missing that day. So they had to play, flute, saxophone, whatever.
Everything and anything. I'm going to throw it over to Dan a second. Dan, do you know how to play any musical instruments, Dan?
I used to play the guitar. I'm not very good
there
at
you
it,
go. Okay. I'm going to throw it over to you. Ask a couple more questions if you can.
Yeah. So let's go back to the concentration camp for a second, Barbara. So how long were they there for?
They were there, they were caught on this August 10, 1944, and they could escape after the bombing on November 29th. So almost 4 months. 4 months, yeah.
And are there other? Yeah, that's incredible. And are there other stories that you've been able to, through your research, about how they leveraged their musical talent in the camp as well?
Yes, of course. I found books where they said, books that there were other prisoners of the concentration camp that told their stories, in particular priests. And they said that during that time, the priests were like in their rooms trying to do mass, and there were always someone that was going to tell them if the Germans were coming, because it was not allowed to pray or to worship or to do masses in the concentration camp. So they were like, the priests were giving mass to some of them, and they are saying that they could hear the other prisoners, the music, I mean, from the windows, that the other prisoners were dancing in waltzes, doing waltzes or things like that. So yes, and one of the touching things are some of the interviews that I had with some friends of my father and my uncle, who also were in the concentration camp. So that's why it took me so long to write this book. It took me 4 years, because I wanted to get as much information about the people that really lived through this. And then when I wrote the book, it's been fun also to tell the story to so many people, and it's a great satisfaction for me, really, to have done this. And
another example of the Italian spirit, huh, Clarissa?
Without a doubt. I mean, come on. I mean, and I don't want to sidetrack, but we saw it even during COVID. All of that, the Italians on their terraces, their back terraces, out there dancing, out there singing, and throwing it out to the world. When everybody thought Italy was going to implode, I mean, it really was like Phoenix rising from the ashes, as Italians always do. I mean, Italians are all over the world. Everywhere you go, I at least always feel like I'm at home because of my 30 years in Italy and the fact that I became an Italian citizen. If there's an Italian in the room, I'm always at home. So that's my quick sidebar. But I did want to say this, Barbara. You had said pre-show when we were getting ready for the show that your father actually did go back and meet some of the other concentration camp survivors some years later.
Yes. For example, there was a very good friend of them that they found him in the concentration camp. So after years, I remember that Nullo Viti was his name. He even came to Venezuela, so I met him there.
Wow.
and they were talking about this story. So I said, wow. And my uncle was always telling me, and I still have the toilet paper from the concentration camp, and I was like, wow, someone has to do this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, why not?
Really,
absolutely. Justin, have you got something that you would like to ask? I see you're so patiently waiting. So let's.
Absolutely. Well, I think no surprise to anybody. Everyone is kind of blown away by this story and completely moved by it. And the questions are rolling in. One of the first questions came from our national president, Bob Bianchi, and he was wondering, how did your father and your uncle's experience affect their political, their personal viewpoints, and what were their biggest takeaways? What were the biggest lessons that you felt that they took away from that experience?
Well, first of all, they never complained. That was something that they lived through hell. And when they came out, they said, okay, life has to go on. We are entertainers. We cannot tell our clients that we lived through this. So if it was not, because every once in a while they talked about it, of course, what they wanted, it was a democracy. They wanted to live in a democracy. They didn't want to go back to what was the fascist regime or any kind of regime. That was their political thinking. And the problem is that after the Second World War in Venezuela, many people, many families were hungry, and they had the opportunity to work not only in Europe with the best bands like Fred Buscaglione, for example, or they were jazz players, and they were very good. So they had the opportunity to work in many venues, in casinos and over there. But then they were invited to go to Venezuela, and from there they blossomed, and they had so much success thanks to their skills, their musical skills. And I have to tell you something, that if you met them during that time, you would never have thought that they lived through hell. Never. So they were entertainers. Stop. That's me, the one that came after and then said the real story, because the real story was there. but they didn't want their clients to know about this.
Yeah.
No.
Justin.
Well, yeah, you started to answer the second question. Maria Pia had a follow-up, and that is, how has it affected you? And I think you started to go into that. You're the
Yep.
product of them, but could you
Absolutely.
elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah.
Well, as a musician, of course, doing music, we grew up listening to great music, played very well. And they not only they were good musicians in popular music, but they had also classical training. So we could listen to them hours and hours, playing from classical to jazz to popular music. My uncle did great arrangements. By the way, my book comes with the website, and if you would like to listen to their music, it's media in the website. Yes, that's why I said, how can I do music for life, not putting the music into the book? So the book comes with this beautiful website called forloveofmusic.com. So if you go there, you can find pictures, you can find the music, and you can see, and you can listen to those arrangements that my uncle used to do. They're very beautiful.
I think we have to go back on one thing, and that is the toilet paper piece. Not only, as we saw on your cover, it really is, the clue, if you will, of the entire story. But what was written on that piece? We didn't touch upon that. So tell us what your uncle was actually typing on that.
Okay, I will tell you. Let me go back to what was written there. Okay,
please.
My uncle tells in this toilet paper what happened during the night of the bombing. When one night a bomb comes to us, oh, what a general fright! A scream both outside and in, everyone hiding under the bunk beds. A hiss, and then that bare light, the shot. Words cannot express our fear. Everyone, I'm certain, believed in that moment something had fallen upon them. But then in each heart, I'm sure they prayed that the good Lord had not sent it. But then you see yourself out of the glow, and we all go to the door. Our heart beats strong as we look upon those whose souls were taken besides us. People, which is the airplane, okay, the bomb, had thrown a piece on the command of the camp nearby and hit the mark right where it wanted. What an unbelievable feeling. In a few words, this was the result. 3 dead and 3 injured among the Germans. Leah finished on a wire fence full of thorns, hurting her knee with arabesques. So you can see, this poor lady that fell into the fence with the thorns, and
I really think, that toilet paper sooner or later should be in the an Italian museum somewhere. Justin, we're going to have to talk about living in perpetuity and not,
You know that I went to the concentration camp there in Fossoli, and they really want the toilet paper to go back to that concentration camp. And I said, well, this is, my family's relic, and it belongs to my aunt, Uncle Renato's wife. So it's not my property. I can show it to the world because I'm into this, but it's her turn. It's her.
It's her property. Yes, of course, absolutely.
I will do anything she wants.
Exactly, of course you
For
would.
the moment, and then you're right. They wanted to put it in the museum there at Fossoli because this is something that it was from Fossoli, so they want this to go back to Fossoli.
Understood. As long as it's somewhere that lives in perpetuity, and that all can remember and never forget.
Exactly. That's the point. When I wrote the book, I said I had to tell my kids this story. Sometimes kids don't think how hard was their grandparents' life. So I said, this is something that they have to learn for sure.
Yes, of course.
So
we can't thank you enough, really, for being with us tonight. I could talk to you all night long, but we do. Maybe we'll take it offline. Dan, we're going to give you some last parting words for Barbara before we say goodbye?
Thanks, Clarissa. No, I'm just grateful for Barbara's time and really for preserving the story. You know, it's stories like these that we have to continue to capture. And that's exactly what, you know, we look to do at the Sons and Daughters of Italy in America, is to share these stories, but also help in some ways to get the stories out, as well as preserve them and promote them, as you eloquently said, Barbara, for the next generation, because really it's them that we need to start leveraging for, you know, to continue to promote our culture and our heritage. So just thank you very much for your time and for capturing the story. I look forward to actually reading the book. I'm ashamed to say I haven't read it yet, but I will.
Well, it's available on Amazon or otherwise on Audible, the audiobook version. So if you would like to listen to it while you drive in your car, go to Audible and it's available
there too. Justin, anything else for us before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I'd like to let everybody know how they can get in contact with us. If you have any questions, you can email us at nationaloffice@osia.org. And if you're interested in becoming a member, go to osia.org, click on the member tab. You can find the nearest local lodge or sign up directly online as an at-large member. And be sure to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Pinterest.
Fantastic. Well, just to remind everybody, this is a standing appointment every Wednesday at 7 o'clock ET, is it, Justin? And I've got it 4 o'clock here PT. Everything will change next weekend. So you're just going to have to figure out what 7 o'clock PT is, because, or yeah, ET is, EDT. But we're here every week. And I know that we always have extraordinary guests and phenomenal stories, just like Barbara Salani. Thanks again so much, Barbara, for being with us tonight.
Clarissa. It was an honor to meet you. I admire you so much. I told you that I've been following you for years and years when I lived in Italy. So
thank you so kindly.
It was a real pleasure. And thank you so much, Dan and Justin. Thank you so much.
Good night. Good night, everyone. We'll see you soon.